Well, good morning and welcome to the final morning of our VoteVets Live special edition marking the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Today, we're going to dive right into our interviews. First, Senator Tammy Duckworth and then Secretary John Kerry. So let's bring in Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, a combat veteran of the Iraq War and someone who needs no introduction to those of you watching in the VoteVets community. Senator Duckworth, good morning, ma'am. How are you? Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good. We're so grateful that you're joining us the night after your big speech.
My pleasure. I've already done 2 morning shows, so sorry I'm a little bleary-eyed.
You look great. Now, I want to go ahead and jump right into our conversation. We'll start with that speech you delivered last night on prime time, the final night of the DNC. It was an incredible speech. I know everyone who works at VoteVets received texts from all of our friends in the military and the veterans community, people who feel that you really hit the commander-in-chief test question head on. You took down Donald Trump as a failed commander-in-chief in that role and his record, not just hypothetical, what he's done. And you talked about what Joe Biden would mean for service members and their families. What do you hope that people who are watching at home took away from those remarks, especially people who may not have a personal or family connection to the military?
I think that I hope that they would understand what the military needs in terms of a commander-in-chief and that what they need in terms of a leader, and also that military families. Sorry. This is what happens when you have live. You have live. My 2-year-old. Come here, baby. Oh, no. Oh, no, now she's gone. But what happens when that military families serve as well. And, that the burden is borne by not just those in the uniform, but the family members as well. And that the Bidens are a military family and they get it on a very personal level. And then also how important it is for a commander to put the well-being of their troops first, which is something that Donald Trump has never, ever done.
Absolutely. We also heard, obviously, from Vice speech that I think really captured the severity of what's at stake. He offered a chance to unite the country. He talked about being a president for all Americans, an American president, regardless of who voted for him, which is something Donald Trump has never shown interest in. He also reached out and talked about people who have been experiencing real pain caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. What did you make of the vice president's remarks?
Well, I think he showed that he understands where Americans are right now and that they're truly hurting. That it's not just about any one thing or any one faction of our country, that it's time to unite the nation, and that he understands that we are faced with multiple crises and that he actually has a plan for getting us out of these crises that Donald Trump led us into, not just with the pandemic, but with our economy, with our standing on the global stage, with our leadership of the free world. And he laid it all out for us. This is something that Donald Trump has not been able to do. And in fact, has, in his own words, he denies responsibility for any of this. And you saw in Joe Biden last night that not only will he take command, he will take responsibility, and he will immediately enact his vision for how we can get out of these multiple crises.
Absolutely. I want to add one other question about just looking back at the kind of some of the convention. A lot of people were talking last night about, I believe his name was Braden Harrington, a 13-year-old boy from New Hampshire who talked about learning to overcome his stutter and how Vice President Biden was so personal. We've seen it all week, these personal stories from people all across the country. How do you think this virtual convention, obviously, in a different world, you would have been delivering that speech on stage in Milwaukee. How do you think the virtual convention went from those stories?
Yeah, I think those stories were the most powerful part of the convention, really, is individual Americans talking about their personal struggles in their lives and showing that we're all interconnected, that we're all struggling, and talking about families that are facing COVID-19, talking about this young man who's facing his disability, talking about the everything that's happening in their daily lives. Because at the end of the day, that's what the election is about, right? It's about finding a leader who is going to not only empathize and understand what we're all struggling with, but also show us the path back into the light, using Joe Biden's word from last night, and into a better life for ourselves and our family members. Because at the end of the day, that's the American dream. That's what we all want, and it's what those of us who served in uniform, you and I, fought for, is for people to have their right to the American dream. And so I thought that was the most powerful part of the convention, was the individual stories, and when people talked about their lives, because their stories about their lives reminded us each about our own lives and our own families.
Absolutely. Some people were commenting, conservative commentators trying to say, well, what does the Democratic Party believe? They have John Kasich and Bernie Sanders, I think it really, it's the opposite point, is that everyone has a place in the coalition Joe Biden is building, no matter what you look like, where you came from, who you love, who you voted for last time. Everybody has a place. So let's turn and look ahead at the final 70 days of this election. Now that the convention is over, next week is the RNC, but I know we're all focused on getting to work. One thing that we've heard from grassroots activists who are watching what's happening with Trump's attacks on democracy writ large, but particularly the Postal Service. They're worried about having a free and fair election in our country. And they also keep asking, how can they help demand that Donald Trump doesn't cheat in the election, protect the Postal Service, et cetera, while not losing focus of the organizing, the phone calls, et cetera, that it takes to get out the vote for Joe Biden.
Well, Donald Trump's trying to cheat in the election right now. He is actively undermining the election by sowing distrust in our democratic process. And then he's actively undermined the U.S. Postal Service. So what we can all do is get registered to vote. And if you are voting by mail, get your ballot early and fill out that ballot and mail it in right away. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't wait until the last week. Oh, here comes my 5-year-old. Here's Abigail. Say hi,
hey,
everybody.
Abigail, how are you?
Abigail just woke up. You can tell. It's summer vacation. But get those ballots in. Get them in early so that they can get counted, because he has done something. He's actually taken mail sorting machines offline, and even though the Postal Service, the Postmaster General, who was $1 million Trump donor, by the way, has said that no, he's going to not do that anymore. They actually sent out a memorandum that we just found out about this morning, telling all of these post office, do not reconnect those mail sorting machines that we took offline. So he's actively undermining it. The best thing we can do is get everyone signed up to vote and go out and vote. And I would recommend vote early, get those ballots in plenty of time so that your vote can be counted. Absolutely.
And part of the reason that the Postal Service is even in this position is because congressional Republicans have been scheming to bankrupt and privatize USPS for decades. It's what they do with other parts of the executive branch as well. Clearly, you served in the administration at the Department of Veterans Affairs. The attacks have been more and more brazen on federal workers at VA over these last few years. But I think finally the president is brazen enough to just match the intent and take it all the way, and his people certainly are too. A lot of them, as you mentioned, with financial stakes in these different parts of the executive branch. It's another reminder of why we need to elect Joe Biden as president, but also keep the House with Nancy Pelosi as the speaker and flip the U.S. Senate. Can you tell people watching what you've seen firsthand during your time in the Senate, in your meetings, your hearings on the floor, that makes you believe that we need to turn the Senate blue and keep champions like Gary Peters, who joined us yesterday, in the fight? So why is it so important? What's broken in the Senate? And who are some of the candidates who can help us change that?
What's broken in the Senate is Mitch McConnell. He has broken the Senate, and he refuses to let things come up for a vote that would actually pass. And he has actively jammed up the Senate so that nothing actually gets voted on. And we do very little work other than to push through very bad judicial nominations. And in fact, we have confirmed people that have been found to be unqualified, unanimously unqualified by the American Bar Association, a nonpartisan organization. We've confirmed people to 15-year and to lifetime appointments who had never tried a case, and they are judged now. And this has all been done on party line vote. Mitch McConnell puts these guys through, and then the Republicans all lined up and they vote along the party line. No matter what they say, they continue to vote along party lines. And that is why we need to flip the Senate, because right now, 2 months ago, we passed the HEROES Act in the House that would actually send money, much needed resources to the Postal Service, much needed resources to our frontline healthcare workers, much needed resources to every state and municipal government. And we have not been able to vote on that. So for 2 months, Americans have not been able to get the help that they need. Their unemployment insurance has expired. All of this because Mitch McConnell won't let us vote on the HEROES Act. And there's many, many more instances of that. That is why we need to flip the Senate, so that even if we even if we win the White House and we have the House, nothing will get past the Senate, so nothing will move, and we'll be in for another 4 years of stagnation. This is why making sure that we return Gary Peters, a fellow veteran, back to the Senate is so important. It is why getting Amy McGrath elected and beating Mitch McConnell in Kentucky would be amazing. It's why we need to flip the seat in Arizona with Mark Kelly out there, who is now actually running a little bit ahead in the poll, but we can't take anything for granted. You got Sarah Gideon in Maine running against Susan Collins, who says all the right things, yet votes along party lines every step of the way, and in her own words, believes Trump for his word, what he has said. Then we've got Cory Gardner that we can beat with Governor Hickenlooper in Colorado, and in Montana, Governor Bullock is running against. In Montana, Governor Bullock can win that race as well. So we have quite a few that we can win, and we've got to make sure we do that. And we got to get Doug Jones back from Alabama as well, and he represents Alabama and has been so great, talking about why it is wrong to have our military bases named after traitors who took arms against our nation. And so we have a lot of fights on our hands, but we need to flip the Senate and keep the House and win the White House, and then we can get to work.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed that you started with all of the military aviators as your preferred. You want like a helicopter fighter pilot caucus.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And you're so right too about Doug Jones, who is on the Armed Services Committee, and we were doing, when I was working for Senator Gillibrand, we were doing NDA markup, and one night, all the MLAs were in a room. Your team was there going through the amendments, and Doug Jones walks in and he says, "I just want to see how it works, and chat with you guys," and grabbed a beer and sat down. I mean, he cares so much about the work in a really personal way. So we need him. Okay. Finally, Senator, I want to ask you to share something not policy related, kind of this personal theme that we've seen this week about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You've gotten to know them during your time serving at the federal level. We've seen so many of these personal kind of leadership impact stories during the convention. Is there a story that stands out in your mind about the type of people that we have leading our ticket into November?
Well, I mean, let me tell you about, Kamala is an amazing cook. So the women senators actually get together, and she often cooks. So she makes really great vegan food, actually. And I can't wait to see her take it to Mike Pence in a debate. And then Vice President Biden, in 2014, I won re-election to the House, and I was ahead in the polls. I mean, I worked hard at it, but we won pretty early. And so it was kind of a quiet race. People didn't, we were paying attention to all these other races. So the next morning, I was just sort of going along my merry way, not thinking about anything. Not a lot of attention paid to me, which was good, meant that I wasn't in trouble. And then my phone rings, and on the other end of the line, I get this, "Hey, Tammy, it's Joe. How you doing?" And I was like, "Joe?" He goes, "Yeah, Biden, the vice president. Good job last night, girl. Way to take it to them." And I was like, "Mr. Vice President, don't you have more important people to call right now than a junior member of the House who won pretty easily? We had some tough races right now." He goes, "No, that's why I'm going to call you, because you put that one away in a win column for our team." And you know what? It wasn't like an operator who called me or a staff. It was literally Joe Biden. When I picked up the phone and I answered it, it was literally Joe Biden in the line. He felt the need to explain who he was. Joe Biden, the vice president. He's just like a regular guy who really cares and is very deeply personal. And I think that's what he's going to bring to the White House, because there's no one who is more empathetic, more resilient, and more understanding of what it truly means to serve, but also to lead than Joe Biden.
Absolutely. A lot of Joe Biden's cell phone call stories during this convention.
this is what he does. He stays in touch. He takes the time.
It's awesome. Senator Tammy Duckworth, thank you. And thanks to Abigail and the whole family for joining us. We'll hope to see you again very soon. Thanks for your leadership, ma'am.
Thank you, Will. Be well, everyone.
Take care. All right, next, we're honored to welcome former Secretary of State John Kerry. Secretary Kerry is once again another leader who needs no introduction to the VoteVets team. 68th United States Secretary of State, serving with President Obama and Vice President Biden. He's led a life of service to this country in elected office and, of course, as a decorated veteran of the war in Vietnam. Mr. Secretary, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be with you. Thank you, and thanks for the terrific VoteVets work. You guys have been doing amazing stuff.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, well, we're excited to talk with you about this week's convention, where we've been active. You obviously have been very active as well. Great speech the other night. We want to talk about that, but then also the work between now and November 3rd, and then cover some of the issues that are facing the country on the world stage, which matters a lot to the VoteVets community. So I want to start with last night. It was a big night at the DNC. Your friend, someone who you've worked with on the most pressing issues facing the American people, former Vice President Joe Biden, delivered his speech at the Democratic National Convention as the party's nominee. Tell us your thoughts on Vice President Biden's speech, what it meant for you to watch him deliver it. I know you were out on the trail with him during the primary, and what kind of a president Joe Biden will be.
Well, I think Joe Biden demonstrated what kind of president he'll be last night, as well as in the grit and determination that he's brought to this entire race. Everybody knows that he was having a difficult time sort of getting his stride, if you will, out in New Hampshire and in Iowa. But I think what you saw last night is the real Joe Biden, who was kind of, feeling this in a way that is palpable for everybody who heard him. There's a passion, there's a commitment, there's a breadth of vision, a fairness, a clear sense of priority, the mission, getting the COVID under control, getting the economy back, putting America back in its place of leadership in the world. And we've never faced as serious a confluence of major issues as we're looking at right now. Domestically, obviously, with so many people unemployed, with such transition in the workplace, with the COVID virus itself, the dislocation, the challenge for our children going to school. I mean, this is just big stuff. And then, of course, globally, you've got a world in unrest. You have a world that is missing the United States of America. And we're needed. We need to be back in action. We do this thing called leadership pretty damn well. And I think we got to get back to the task. We put together the Iran nuclear agreement. It's in shatters now. We got to put it back together in tatters. The nuclear agreement, the work we've done with Russia with respect to nuclear weapons, that's sort of running amok now with the INF treaty, the START treaty. You look at global climate change, the crisis. It's not even change anymore. It's a crisis. And the fact is that we're going to have to make monumental efforts on a global basis, particularly with China and other developed countries at the table. And if they're not at the table and we're not helping to push that agenda, we got a problem. So that was all on the table last night. And I thought the Vice President gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard him give. I think he gave confidence to the American people, and I'd be very surprised if there isn't a bump that comes in the polls in the next few days.
Absolutely, sir. And you talked about that too, about recent developments. Well, we've seen them for 3.5 years. Stories happening on the world stage where the United States is absent or wouldn't have the credibility to speak out on issues because Donald Trump and his cronies have sacrificed so much of that work. Right. And I want to barrel in a couple of those specific policy areas before we talk about the campaign ahead of us. And Donald Trump has worked, as you said, to undo so much of the progress that President Obama, Vice President Biden, and you championed to lead on the global stage in a way that reflected the best of who we are as a nation and helped protect our troops. One of those efforts VoteVets was heavily involved in supporting was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal. And at VoteVets, we saw that diplomatic achievement as a win for our men and women in uniform, as a chance to choose diplomacy and avoid, a potential military confrontation with Iran. the deal worked. It was working until President Trump withdrew in 2018 and has erratically escalated relations militarily, continuing this week with saying that he'll invoke the snapback provisions of the JCPOA. What has the withdrawal meant for our national security, to our relationships, particularly with our allies who helped build that deal? And what will President Biden do to get us back to where we were when it came to the Iran deal?
Well, the withdrawal from the Iran deal has put the world at risk. It has shredded American credibility in terms of presidential negotiation. Donald Trump is the only president in the world who has pulled out of major agreements. He pulled out of the Iran agreement, which has obviously made that region more dangerous. I mean, the fact is that before Trump pulled out, no ships were being fired on in the Gulf. No Americans were at risk in the region. We didn't have rockets being fired into our bases and so forth. It was a consequence of the president breaking the deal. The president of the United States broke a deal that took a nuclear weapon off the table. And he empowered, by doing so, he empowered the naysayers in Iraq. The IRGC, the hardliners, the people who never wanted to see their program constrained, were actually empowered by pulling the rug out from under, the political rug pulled out from under Rouhani and Zarif and company. And it's made it harder now to go back. I mean, yes, we've got to get back, but I think we're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to be very hard-nosed about where we have to go with respect to another agreement, just to be able to give confidence to people in America that we're in fact protecting our interests and Israel's interests and the regional interests as we do it.
Absolutely. I think as you talk about the damage to our relations there, it's a theme that we've been trying to hit this week in VoteVets. We released an ad for the DNC at the Veterans and Military Families Council meeting titled "A Real Commander-in-Chief," and trying to make the case that it's not just the rhetoric, the disrespect toward John McCain and veterans, but it's those actions that have taken a real tangible hit on our security posture. Another core focus of our policy and our activism at VoteVets has been bringing an end to what's been called the forever wars, the endless wars. I'd like to ask you specifically about Afghanistan. President Trump promised to end the war. He has not. There's been a lot of discussion during the primary when it comes to foreign policy about how we bring our troops home. And meanwhile, we heard from the top U.S. military commander, Army General Austin Miller, in 2018, that he said this is not going to be won militarily. This is going to be a political solution. So when it comes to ending the war, I mean, the other piece of that too, I know you're familiar with, the challenge here in our government is the inability for Congress to actually debate these issues involving authorizing the use of military force. So for our VoteVet supporters, as someone who personally has friends, and I know you do too, who are serving in Afghanistan as we speak, what can be done when Joe Biden is our commander-in-chief with regard to the war? And second part, is it time for Congress to step up as well and take those tough votes on matters of war and peace?
Well, the answer to the second part of your question is absolutely yes. I mean, that profoundly. Congress has a fundamental responsibility to be accountable for the right to declare war or to be involved in a war or to fund a war. We went through this battle when we came back from Vietnam. The funding of the war was one of the major tools by which one could actually have an impact on the policy. And, all of the vets understand better than anybody that when you're the tip of the spear, you want to make certain that the decisions have been well thought through, that you are not being put into a crazy political situation or a political war where your lives and the lives of your comrades are being put on the line for less than well thought out policy, for less than achievable goals, for some war that you shouldn't even be involved in the first place. And I think that that measure of responsibility that is so critical to what we do has got to be always fulfilled by members of Congress. They're the front line representing, the interests, and it's not a small thing that Joe Biden and Jill Biden, through Beau, were as exposed as a military family to these choices and to what they mean. So one of the things I think people can have a great sense of confidence about is the vice president's readiness to be commander in chief and to be able to look at these decisions and understand what the consequences are of the choice you make to families and to individual soldiers. So that's critical. But going back to the other piece of the Iran, the consequences here, what Joe Biden understands is that diplomacy is an art form. It's a critical first dimension of any policy decision that you make. I've always said ever since Vietnam that it's critical for any commander-in-chief or anybody in any position of responsibility, congressman or senator, you owe it to America, you owe it to the Constitution, you owe it to yourself and your constituents to make sure that before you send young men and women off to fight somewhere, you have exhausted the remedies that are available to you. War should be the choice of last resort. You do it because you have to do it. And I'm not a pacifist. There are times when, you may have to fight. You may just be staring at a problem that leaves you no alternative. You've been attacked, for instance, as we were from Afghanistan. It's why we went in the first place. But then leaders took their eye off the ball, started focusing on Iraq, a war of pure choice, and they ignored Afghanistan. And so Afghanistan was allowed to sort of tumble out of control for a long period of time. And that's why we inherited the resurgence of the Taliban and the problems that we face today. We never sought that political decision at the political solution at the earliest stages. And I think General Miller is absolutely correct. Just Austin Miller is absolutely correct. There is no military solution to what is going on in Afghanistan. I spent a lot of time as Secretary of State working first with Hamid Karzai, the president, and then helping President Ghani and Abdullah to emerge as a joint leadership. That was an idea that we had to try to save the country from going into complete and total chaos. And it's worked, not as well as we would have loved, but it's worked fundamentally to hold that government together. That government has now got to connect itself to the people more effectively. There's got to be, more readiness to make it difficult for the Taliban to be able to be the force that they've been, that's been able to perpetuate this thing. Mm-hmm. I think that the political solution has to be one that is durable, not the kind of thing where we know it's going to fold and fall in a matter of months, but where there really is a fighting chance for something to emerge that's better for the people there. And there are an awful lot of people who have invested in us, in the NATO mission, in the broader aspirations of democracy and freedom. Women particularly are at risk and have taken great chances, great risks to be able to be participants in the society. So there are a lot of things on the line here. And one of the key things that's been missing is real diplomacy that recognizes that even some of the neighbors there could actually make a difference to the outcome. Russia is one of them. All of the stands, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan, et cetera, they are neighbors. And Iran is a very big and very important neighbor. So part of your discussions for a JCPOA could in fact involve help from Iran. People might scoff at this and say, oh my God, you're crazy, it's not going to happen. But guess what? When I was Secretary of State, we got several ceasefires and made progress in trying to work a peace process in Yemen with help from Iran. And the fact is that Iran will contribute to trying to stabilize if in fact there's a larger mission here diplomatically that also addresses a broader set of interests. So it's diplomacy that's going to make the difference, and there just hasn't been any very significant diplomacy in that part of the world.
Absolutely. And sir, I want to we've talked a little bit about where things are. When we look ahead to what's possible if we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There's a lot of work to be done to get just back to baseline, as you've laid out. A question we've heard quite frequently from people who care about America's role in the world, our military, our diplomats, is whether we can, restore the standing that we had despite the damage that's been done. I know you're optimistic. We sure are that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can get the job done. What would you say to people who are worried about just the depth of the challenge and what has happened to our reputation over these last 3.5 years?
You're speaking about writ broadly about all the issues, climate change, et cetera?
Sure. So, I think just the feeling that people used to have that the world looked to the United States for leadership, and clearly Donald Trump was never interested in that and has allowed those relationships all over to falter, and has embraced, as you've said, love letters with Kim Jong-un wanting to have spilling state secrets or intelligence to the Russian foreign minister in the Oval Office. Frankly, there are some people that we talk to who are worried about whether we can, restore that American leadership.
I believe we can. And I believe we can not just, those aren't a matter of words. People in the world have learned to appreciate the best side of what America has to offer in that context ever since World War II. And with the end of World War II, we assumed a responsibility fundamentally for helping to structure the world. We provided the Marshall Plan and restored the economies of Japan and Germany. That was a tough lift, folks. You can imagine after World War II and the losses and the fact that we were attacked and that Europe was attacked, and we turned around and we were charitable to the entities that we defeated. And today, Japan and Germany are two of the strongest allies and strongest democracies in the world that we have. So if you ever think about a difficult lift that resulted in very positive things for our country, the way we responded to the aftermath of World War II did it. And that created this time period during which we made such a difference. We stood up in the Cold War. We negotiated critical agreements on arms control with the former Soviet Union. We put NATO together. You can run a long list of things that we did to try to strengthen the world and build institutions from the UN on that were calculated to say, never again. We don't want these kinds of global conflicts. There's a better world. But that better world involves human rights. It involves democracy, it involves individual respect, and it involves doing things responsibly. And that has not been what the rest of the world, what some members of the rest of the world have chosen to do in the absence of the United States. So our leadership is needed, I believe. The great tasks of dealing with cyber warfare, dealing with nuclear weapons, dealing with the climate crisis, dealing with China and the South China Sea and its push in various parts of the world, dealing with Kim Jong-un. All of these things are on the table. And none of them have progressed positively over the last 3.5, 4 years. So if ever there was a mission, if ever there was a moment for veterans who are particularly clear about what the cost of these things are, this is the moment. And I think vets have a huge role to play over these next 2 months in helping Americans to really sort out what is at stake.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great transition, sir, because finally I want to talk about that home stretch of this campaign between now and November 3rd. You've been a constant supporter of our work at VoteVets over these past 14 years to elect veterans to office, to make sure that voice is heard on Capitol Hill and in the executive branch as well. We know you're going to be working your heart out for Vice President Biden and Senator Harris. What do you need from the people who are watching at home today? You know politics as well as anyone. What's it going to take?
Let me be very direct. I love the question. I thank you for the question. I want to be very direct about this. Folks, in 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, only 55.6% of eligible voters turned out to vote for a presidential race. 55.6% of the United States American citizens who could vote came out. That's horrible. I mean, that is really a sad message from the leading democracy in the world. Many other countries that have elections and that are democratic do far better than we do in terms of voting. And none of those countries are in worse shape than we are. They're all in better shape than we are with respect to COVID. So we clearly have a leadership deficit that requires us to be involved. And the fact is that 9% of Barack Obama's vote voted for Trump. 7% of Barack Obama's vote didn't even bother to come out. So the Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton, had a 16% deficit from the very beginning. That's not how you win a race. So when I ran, the turnout was about 62.1 or 4% or somewhere in there. When Obama got elected 4 years later, the turnout was 63.7%. So you get the drift. Turnout, we win. The vast majority of Americans want America to behave like America. They want America to get back in track. They want us to lead. They want us to address these concerns like racism and climate, and fairness and the economy and so forth. The way that's going to happen is for veterans to help go out and organize and use their experience, use the leadership skills that they were given in the course of their service, and take the best articulation of their experience and share it with people as to why it matters who is president, and help make a difference, help turn out people, young people, particularly. In the 2016 election, only 19% of the eligible voters between ages of 18 and 25 came out to vote. 19%, oh my God. And in 2018, when we won back the House, it got better, but it still was only 31%. So we should be seeing numbers like 60%, 70%. These are the folks with the greatest stake in the future. And they're the ones who put themselves on the line, by the way, in terms of the present. So my hope is that everybody will realize democracy doesn't work on automatic pilot. It takes the citizens, the most important word, one of the most important words in the English language, citizen. You've got to be a citizen, and you got to go out and exercise your responsibility to vote. You've also got to help make that democracy work by being involved.
Secretary Kerry, sir, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Your support of VoteVets is part of the new employee orientation here. You mean a lot to us, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, let's welcome back Leo Cruz of the Biden-Harris campaign and Ron Pierce of the Democratic National Committee, the two gentlemen who are charged by our nominee and our party with mobilizing veterans and military families to vote blue this November. Leo and Ron, welcome. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Hey, you're following a solid lineup this morning with Senator Duckworth and Secretary Kerry. So we are excited to round out the week with our two most distinguished guests, you both. So let's get started with last night's speeches. We'll talk about the full week in a second, but I want to start with the speeches last night. Leo, your thoughts first.
Yeah, thanks, Will. This has been a wonderful week, and Joe Biden met the moment. He showed us that while he'll be our Democratic nominee, as he said, he'll be an American president, and that's something we really need right now. He laid out his positive vision for the country, reaffirmed his core belief that we can unite this country even in this divisive time, and it reminded us that when we stand together, united, there's nothing we can't accomplish, and there's no challenge too great, and there's nothing we can't do, and that's the message that inspires me to do what I do here, and I hope inspires everyone else to vote for Joe.
Absolutely. All right, Ron, your turn.
I have to piggyback on what Leo said. The line of the night was that I'll be an American president, and he made the case on why his vision for America, his policies are better than the current occupant of the White House. He, again, and I appreciate, and I know all three of us appreciate, he made a case on why he's better for veterans and military family members. And I thought it was a great weaving of his character, his policies, and his vision for America. So as Leo said, he met the moment, and I thought it was a wonderful night and a wonderful way to wrap up the convention.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's take stock of the entire convention. Obviously, virtual this year because of the public health crisis that we're facing in this country. We saw stories throughout the week from everyday Americans talking about how they're working to get through this time, the issues that matter to them. Last night, we talked about with Senator Duckworth, a heartfelt story from a young man in New Hampshire. Joe Biden helped him with his public speaking confidence. Ron, wrap up the week. What are you taking away? What were some of your favorite moments, and what do you think it meant for the Democratic Party, the way that this unfolded?
I thought it was extremely well planned out, and I don't think we're going back. There will be in-person conventions, but reaching out across the digital divide and touching a lot more people will be part of the convention planning. I thought starting with his character, the vice president's character, and talking about the importance of this election, for the soul of the nation and saving democracy was important. And just a unified Democratic Party, I thought, was put on, showing the various presidential candidates coming to support Joe Biden. I thought one of my favorite moments was last night was the young man from New Hampshire. I think he sealed the deal for us in New Hampshire, if not across the nation. And I think just a lot of people said that there wasn't enough policy. I think the first 2 days that might have been a fair criticism or argument, but from day 2 and day 3, you saw a clear vision put forward by the Biden-Harris ticket. And so obviously Michelle Obama's speech, President Obama's speech, and Joe Biden's speech were the significant highlights for me.
Absolutely. All right, Leo, your take on the week in sum.
Yeah, I think you two have already stated this, but I was really grateful to see the diversity of America highlighted, from the small town farmer to the small business owner to the union worker to everyday Americans just trying to work hard to achieve their piece of the American dream and leave a better future for their children, as I try to do. I agree with Ron. The virtual format is something that I think was more inclusive. Applaud Ron for his leadership. I think we had thousands of people participating in the DNC Veterans and Military Family Council meeting, which usually is a ballroom of 100 people. So we're definitely going to look at this in the future. But the virtual format, while it may not have been without its hiccups, I do want to say a special shout out and thank you to the convention team, particularly for the evening program, which was a professional event that we all should deserve. That was entertaining as well as informative. And I also finally want to hit on the fact that I was so proud to see so many great numbers of veterans and military families who participated, not just in the DNC Council and the Vets for Biden meetings and virtual events, but throughout the convention, veterans and military families were highlighted in a way that wasn't hokey, but a genuine reflection of the Biden's dedication to our community. And I think there was lots of notes to that throughout the convention that said, this isn't trying to score some political points. This is really who the Bidens are.
Absolutely. And I think, Leo, you said it really well, but we got to give a huge shout out to everyone on the convention staff, the campaign staff, the DNC, who did the technical piece of this, because we all saw bits and pieces of it, of being in the Zoom waiting room with the blinking light and this and that. I mean, the number of events that were happening, the fact that it went off as well as it did, is a real testament to a lot of people who did not get to sleep much this week. You both are included in that as well. Ron, the number of briefing memos that you had to turn out for your Veterans and Military Families Council meeting gives me nightmares. But it was again, this team organized will win in November. So let's close by talking about that. That's how I want to end the week. Let's talk about the plan in front of us. Leo, what will the Biden-Harris campaign, Ron, what will the DNC be doing between now and November to mobilize veterans and military families get them involved in the process? What do you need from people watching? Let's just talk about what the next few months look like. Leo, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Will. We have 74 days until Election Day, but people are going to start voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in just 28 days. That's less than a month till election season starts. And we need to start thinking about November 3rd as the deadline to vote, not as the start of elections. I need to get as many people as possible to vote as soon as possible. And Michelle Obama said it. We need to vote in numbers that cannot be ignored. So I asked the audience to either, if they haven't already done it, since it's been said numerous times throughout the convention, please text VOTE to 30330. Again, VOTE to 30330. And make sure your registration is up to date, that you've requested a mail-in ballot, that you tell your friends and family to do the same. We cannot leave a ballot behind. And then, if you need help in doing all this, go to the iStore or Apple Store, the Google Play Store, whatever, and download the Vote Joe app and use it to keep up with the latest campaign activities in your area and connect with your network to commit to restoring the soul of this country. Is what we're here for.
Absolutely. Okay, Ron.
Ditto to everything Leo said. I would add, check iwillvote.com to again make sure your registration's up to date. Your precinct. Share that important link with your friends. Again, iwillvote.com. Make a plan to vote. You heard it from night one until the end of the night. Once you receive, if you're voting by mail, get your ballot, review it immediately, fill it out immediately, turn it in, and that allows you to open up so you can assist more with those voting on November 3rd. I think Leo made a critical point. We need to look at November 3rd as the end of the process, not the beginning. So in less than 30 days, again, people are going to be voting for the presidency. So make a plan, review your ballot, fill out your ballot, and then volunteer to be a poll watcher to help get people to the polls that are voting on November 3rd or that week prior to November 3rd. But that is critical. The other thing that we're going to do is make sure that the veteran groups, veterans and military family members connect with the coordinated campaigns and the state parties in the battleground states, so we can, as veterans and military family members, bring an army of volunteers and activists to help out with the Biden coordinated campaigns and the state parties in the battleground states. So that's our plan in the next 75 days.
Absolutely. It's exciting, right? Are you guys ready to go? I know everybody's exhausted, but it's
no time to be exhausted.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. You guys know this. Well, you both have just done a tremendous job this week with all of the programming around veterans, military families, making those voices part of the convention. You both are just best in the business, and we are really excited at VoteVets to work with you guys over these next 70, is it 68, 70, whatever, approximately we have left. So let's close the week out with everyone's favorite portion of VoteVets Live. Leo, a final fun fact about either the vice president, Senator Harris, or their spouses who we might not know, or that fact that we might not know.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to say thank you to you, to Ron, to everyone that's made this event, this convention so successful. And I'm going to skip it and not include a fun fact, but just hope that this last saying of that, I hope that everyone that watched the convention and continues to watch Joe Biden for the next 74 days comes away as knowing that Joe Biden is just a good guy who cares about people. That's it. That's the tweet. It's not about some 50-step plan to fix all of America's problems, but knowing that Joe Biden will bring together a team of patriotic Americans who do the work back better, not for their own personal gain, but because it's the right thing to do. And that's why I'm supporting Joe Biden and ask that you all do too. Thank you.
Well said. Well said. I think Tammy Duckworth covered the fun fact, which is that Joe Biden will call you on your cell phone without knowing it. So I guess if you're watching, You get a random, Delaware area code call on your cell phone. Pick it up. All right, Leo and Ron, thank you both. Thanks for helping us with this program this week. Thank you to Secretary John Kerry and Tammy Duckworth for joining us earlier this morning, to all of the incredible guests who have joined us this week on VoteVets Live for our special coverage of the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Now it's time to get to work. At VoteVets, we're in this fight with you all the way through November to elect more veterans to office, to make the voices of veterans heard in this campaign, and to elect Joe Biden, a real commander-in-chief, as our next president. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, VoteVets.